Boom! Welcome into sportsBIT. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Tuesday, March 21st. Big game breakdown loaded. One game in the association, the Spurs and the T-Wolves, with some good numbers there as always. And then we start with the Sweet 16. The Midwest Regional from Kansas City. Oregon and Michigan, Kansas and Purdue. Two great games coming up. And then we'll look at the odds now to win it all in the deep dive in the madness. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Bad for the books. Celtic money came in once word got out that Isaiah Thomas was playing, and looks like the Celtics are going to grab that 2 seed. The Wizards' point spread free fall continues, Teddy.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's time for a mea culpa. Look, we do our best to be 100% accurate here on sportsBIT. We're looking to be viewed as a legitimate resource for mainstream media and something that you, our viewers, can rely on. But we're also human, and once we record in the early morning hours, there's nothing we can do about it after. And I'll tell you what, I screwed up on yesterday's show, Paul. I thought the Celtics Wizards were in Washington, not in Boston, and I gave a very wrong projected point spread as a result. And it could only happen on a game with no overnight spread, because there's nothing for me to go and double check with and go, oh shit, why is my line 8 points off the market number? So, mea culpa, my mistake, I own it, I apologize. I'll do my best to make sure we don't have another one for a long, long time. Thanks for your understanding. But yeah, when you talk about a bad result for the house, look, the Wizards now, 2 point spread covers their last 11 games. And this is a squad that went 23-7 against the spread over a 30-game span. They made a fortune for their backers. All of a sudden, they're starting to give more than a little bit of that back. And you have to wonder if the minutes have finally taken their toll on John Wall. We're talking about a guy who's top 10 in the NBA in minutes played the last 3 games, 13 of 39 from the field, 2 of 10 from three-point range. He hasn't looked like the same player.
Nope. Celtics 11-1, last 12 at home straight up, 4-0 ATS the last 4, but 0-6 ATS the previous 6, just 6-6 ATS with the 12-game run. Very quietly and way under the radar, the Warriors are 12-1 to the under since going over the first game back of the All-Star break, Teddy, and the over took money last night.
Sure, and one of the things we like to do on sportsBIT is talk about these under-the-radar streaks you can make money with, not once, not twice, but again and again. So here's the Celtics streak getting all the pub. You know, they're 11-1 their last 12 at home. You bet Boston during the streak, you've made $0. All right? You watch mainstream outlets, what are you going to see about this Wizards 12-1 run to the under? Not a word. Not a word. Their offense has gotten worse. Their defense has gotten better. And as you mentioned, they took over money last night against OKC from 221, bet up to 224. They're still routinely being totaled in the 220s, even higher. And look, defensively, do you see what they did to Westbrook last night? They shut him down. 4 of 16 from the floor, 5 turnovers, only 27 minutes of court time. The Thunder were minus 25 when Westbrook was on the floor. That's championship level defense the Warriors are playing, and the markets are lagging a notch or two behind.
And that should do it for his MVP chances too, as he was horrible in that game, and Harden has been lighting it up. He's favored for a reason. Bad bet, Magic bet up from 5 to 6, never led by 6 even in overtime. They did rally from 18 down to win. Orlando was chalk 3-13 ATS. Ooh, that is hideous.
Yeah, and that's for the year. But last night they weren't just chalk. They were bet up from -5 to -6. So you say the Magic, you go back and look through your point spread logs for the season. As -5 or higher, they have one cover all year. So here's Philly. They're on the second night of back-to-backs. They're off 2 wins. Yeah, it's not a Sixers spot exactly. Even that can't end Orlando's chalk ineptitude. And even in overtime, the Sixers with the final bucket to get under the number. And Orlando does not get the money. But I'm telling you, Pauly, the books took the gas pipe on that total. It opened 210.5. It closed 218.5. That is a big steam move. And of course, the books are set to win all that money, right?
That's a horrible beat. Tied at 89 at the end of regulation?
98, yeah. Tied at 98 at the end of regulation. But it's still, you said 89. But it's still staying under by 20 points at the end of regulation. And then it got to 221 at the end of overtime. Ouch for the books. Bettors stuck it to them. Good job, guys. Well done.
Serious steam move there. This was a good opportunity, a good spot, if you will. You rarely see this in the NIT, and bad for the books. Illinois was bet up from 7 to 8.5. They had the press conference introducing Underwood early in the day, and they went out and they were ready to go against Boise.
Yeah, they sure were. But they kind of pulled away late to win by margin. Nothing but Illini money, sharp squares on the same side there. Illinois bet up to 8.5. They win by 13. And NIT action on ESPN.
Bad for the books. The Hawks go down. No Millsap, no Bazemore. They're going to be either supposed to miss a few more games as well, and the Hawks are in a free fall.
Yeah, well, it's easy to say, oh, it's Millsap, it's Bazemore. How many times have we seen this from a Dwight Howard team, Pauly? How many times? Every year. The answer is every single year for the last 10 years.
I don't know about that. I don't think that's fair.
It may be random. It may be happenstance. It may be he's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But this is another Dwight Howard team that has suddenly fallen apart and underachieving mightily. Look, they're 0-4 their last 4. The last 3 losses all by double digits. They're 3-7 straight up their last 10. You want to talk point spreads? How about this? 3-11 against the spread since the All-Star break. You know, markets are starting to catch on. Charlotte bet from -5 to -6 last night. They won the game by 15.
Line variance for the Sweet 16 games. Right now, as we record this, you can take Kentucky plus 1.5 at the MGM Mirage here in Vegas. You can take UCLA plus 1 at Pitt.
Yeah, and then you root really hard for somebody to win by 1 point. Of course, there's not a reduced juice, but that's -110 on the Kentucky plus 1.5 side. -109 at Penny. So you can actually find a legitimate middle right now, or at least that opportunity if somebody wins by 1. Not a bet I made, Pauly, not a bet I'd recommend, but it's interesting to see that this line has not settled quite where we thought it would when we said that Kentucky would be the short chalk. The markets haven't agreed with us.
And I'll do you one better. It was good to meet Tripp out at the South Point a couple weeks ago. Loyal viewer, nice guy. Jimmy Vaccaro and his crew, Chris Andrews at the South Point, have $5 lines for the Sweet 16 game. So if you're in town, make it down to the South Point. Up next, big game breakdown. We'll start in the association, and then we'll get to the Midwest Regional. 2 good games coming up on sportsBIT. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on sportsBIT, Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Time for big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Spurs hit the road to take on the T-Wolves. Spurs 5, 205.5 the total. Spurs were laying 4 at Mini December 6th, won 105.91. Laying 12 at home January 17th, won 122 to 114. And March 4th, they were laying 7.5 and won by 7 in overtime at home. The T-Wolves led by 9 in the fourth quarter. The gang's all here for the Spurs. Parker back, Aldridge back, but Pop still tinkering with the rotation, Teddy.
Yeah, sure. You know, he's all of a sudden using Dwayne Dedman as a starting center, Davis Bertans as a starting center over the last 2 games. I have to wonder if Pau Gasol is going to move into that spot before the playoffs. And of course, now we have Tony Parker, someone who we've kind of been criticizing a little bit this year, finally accepting his new role, which is to be a second-tier player. Quote, "It's not my job anymore to try and be a scorer or to try and be aggressive. I just have to take whatever it is for me. Sometimes I'll take 3, 4 shots. Sometimes I'll take 10 shots. It depends on the games. It depends on how Kawhi and LA, LaMarcus Aldridge, how they're rolling and stuff like that. I can't focus on one-on-one matchups with Westbrook and Curry because that's not my job anymore. I just want to try and do whatever I can to be the best that I can in whatever Pops wants me to do now. And if ever there is a statement of the San Antonio Spurs culture, that's it from Tony Parker, what Greg Popovich has installed in that organization, second to none at the NBA level."
Spurs came out of the break with wins and covers against the Lakers and Clippers at the Staples Center. Since then, 3-8 ATS. 1 cover against the Kings on the second of back-to-backs. 1 cover against the Warriors. Kerr said, everybody, you know about that game on the Saturday night. And 1 cover by 1 point against the Hawks that we talked about earlier that have been falling apart. 4 straight overs. So the defensive decline is Pop tinkers with the rotations. The T-Wolves run at a playoff spot, all but finished. 0-3 straight up in ATS on that road trip. And the defense got shredded for 117, 123, and 123. 4 straight overs, too. Here's Tibbs, quote, "The game is in the balance. You've got a chance to win in the fourth, and you let go of the rope, and that's what happens. So there's not much fight. If the game's in the balance, you got to make tough plays. We didn't do it. It's not going to change by itself. We got to get it right," end quote. So now you just wonder if we're not making the playoffs. What are we going to get out of this group the rest of the way, as they couldn't defend at all on that road trip?
Yeah, and I have even though you have a feel, for a team like Minnesota that probably just blew their last chance realistically to make a run at a playoff spot. Not that they're going to say to themselves, we have no chance anymore, but somewhere these guys know it. So you look at teams like that, and in general, they're not teams I'm looking to support over the final month of the NBA season. But when you get a game like this, a statement game, sometimes a step-up game, you get somebody good coming into your house, those are the type of games that teams like Minnesota tend to treat like playoff games, especially, and again, it's not revenge is not a huge revenge here, but there is a revenge angle with the overtime loss to the Spurs, a game that they led in the fourth quarter in San Antonio earlier this month. I don't think this is one of those spots that Minnesota lays down. That being said, I'm not convinced they can get stops. This is a game that we'll talk about again later in the show.
All right, here we go. We'll do it all week and the rest of the week here on sportsBIT. Game number 2, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Midwest Regional, Kansas City. The late game, 6:30 Pacific Thursday night. Purdue and Kansas. Kansas 4.5, 156.5 the total. Kansas, I felt, caught a break by losing early in the Big 12 tournament. Only had to play one game over a span of 13 days. They went out and scored 190 in the first 2 rounds last week. Maybe the best end game with Mason and Jackson. The best one-on-one offensive players in the nation, can play off each other. Both can get to the basket, can pull up for jumpers. They both can lob to each other for dunks, and you saw that in single-digit games with Jackson playing, 13-2. Both losses came in overtime. But are you concerned about the size and depth up front? Not a lot of fouls to give.
Well, yeah, and that's, if you're going to beat Kansas, the way to beat them is to pound the ball down low. And you talked about that number, 4.5. We're starting to see 5s pop up on the Jayhawks right now. If you do like the Kansas side, this is one of those situations you probably want to get to the window sooner rather than later. You talk about the Michigan State game. Look, Landon Lucas got into foul trouble that forced Dwight Colby, a guy who averages 5 minutes a game, into action. But you know what? Colby played really well, and that may be good prep for this game. We always look for guys who didn't have an impact during the regular season that all of a sudden play big come the postseason. Dwight Colby may be one of those guys. Here's what Frank Mason said after the game. Quote, Colby gave us the spark we needed. Landon got in foul trouble, and he came in prepared and ready to play. We're going to need that moving forward because you never know who's going to get in foul trouble or an injury or anything like that.
Now, can Purdue take advantage of the front court? They got Swanigan. They got Biggie down there and Haas. They beat Iowa State 37-23 on the boards. Swanigan, definitely an NBA player. They made 23 of 38 two-point attempts, but they stepped slow on defense, not pressuring the ball as well. You saw what Burton was able to do, and Iowa State got a lot of great looks, especially in the second half when they made that run down 19. But the Boilermakers, 288 in the nation in turnovers percentage forced, 305 in steal percentage. Can they disrupt Mason and get Kansas to maybe hurry and do what they don't like to do? And, Bill Self wasn't happy with the shot selection in that win against Michigan State.
Well, yeah, Purdue, when they've lost this year, the problems have been a defense that's not particularly efficient. Now, Kansas, they have 64 field goal attempts, 15 free throw attempts versus Sparty. In all of those possessions, only 6 turnovers. Mason didn't have any in that ballgame. Here's a Purdue defense that only forced 7 turnovers against Iowa State, and again, allowed 60 field goal attempts, 14 free throw attempts in that ballgame. So you have an offense that's not going to turn the ball over and a defense that's not going to force turnovers. Advantage, Kansas Jayhawks.
All right. It'll be a hell of a game. Should be a lot of fun. Although I wouldn't just pencil them in, Teddy. They've had problems in Kansas City. It's no lock by any stretch.
No, I don't think it's a lock at all. What did I say going into the tournament? That Purdue, of all the teams out of the Big Ten, Purdue's the one that's live to make the run of the Final Four. I will not sell the Boilermakers short. And I have not made a wager on that game. If I'm going to bet, my initial lean is towards the over. But it's probably not a game I'm going to have action on.
I do not like Painter, though, in a close game. They continue to blow big leads in the tournament. We start the day, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. We start Thursday, 4 o'clock Pacific. Good game. Michigan and Oregon.
Yeah, Michigan's won now. There was 1.5s out there. It's mostly 1. Yeah, Michigan won 147.
Okay, we'll call it that. 147. So much talk about the drama off the tarmac But from a basketball sense, the season turned when the big guys started playing well. 12-2 straight up, 10-4 ATS the last 14 games, and nothing wrong with either loss. Lost by 5 at Minnesota in overtime, and a buzzer beater against Northwestern. Beeline is a terrific coach. So is Altman, but this is an incredible run by Michigan here, Teddy.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the national media started paying attention when that plane skidded off the tarmac. Okay, but the reality is that the Wolverines had turned the corner before that happened. And what we've seen since then has just been a continuation of what we saw in terms of improvement down the stretch of the Big Ten campaign. Now, look, they have the backcourt. You know, we like guard play and elite guard play in March. Obviously, there's Derek Walton and Zach Irvin. They've been steady veterans in the backcourt. They've been able to count on those guys all along. But the change has come with Moritz Wagner and DJ Wilson, two guys in the front court. Those two combined for 43 of the 73 points against Louisville. And since the start of the Big Ten tournament, two guys, again, who were not stepping up, did not step up on a regular basis during the regular season. Since the start of that Big Ten tournament, look at it, the graphic right here. Both Wilson and Wagner impact players on both ends of the floor.
Beeline added flexibility in the offense, and it turned Louisville's switching defense inside out. Wagner, quote, like Coach B said, we've been working a lot on the switching defense, getting the ball in the post, being aggressive down there as well. I think I'm very confident because of our practice, because of the work we put in, and it paid off today. Here's Patino. He made too many poor switches in the second half. Maybe it was Beeline that led them into the switches that he wanted, because they were down 8, and then all hell broke loose in the second half.
Well, I mean, again, Patino, the media loves him. You ask me in terms of X's and O's, how much clearer can it get? The one coach is like, hey, we set the player from the Michigan is like, hey, yeah, we practiced all this stuff. The coach set it all up. We did great. And there's Patino. We made too many poor switches in the second half. No, Ricky, you didn't have your team ready to face Beeline, who is now 15-6 against the spread lifetime in NCAA tournament gains, 71% long term. And again, 21 games, not a huge sample size, but it's enough of a sample size to pay attention to for John Beeline and the Wolverine. And of course, one thing that people aren't talking about, how calm Michigan was when they were down by margin at halftime. His quote, we won every 4-minute period until we got ahead in the game. And just by playing in those little increments made a big difference. You know, coach is helping me, assistant coach is helping me, great game plan. I can't tell you how many plays they suggested that worked. It was a great team win for everybody.
Dana Altman said they were fortunate to get through Rhode Island. He's not kidding. I mean, Dorsey was the man. Dorsey was 9 of 10 shooting, hit the big three to get the win. Good enough to beat Rhode Island, but will that be good enough to beat Michigan? No Boucher, and it showed. Rhodey making 24 of the 37 two-point shots. Ducks also had more turnovers than assists. Dorsey and Brooks combined for 46 points, and that duo also had 42 against Iona. Can they keep this up? Is this team good enough to continue and make a run, or will the loss of Boucher continue to haunt them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, right now, you're going to enlist a tournament MVP. Dorsey might be my guy, you know. 18 of 23 from the field in this tournament. 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 51 points. He's been pretty good. His quote, we didn't want to put our jerseys up and go home with a loss. We got big stops and rebounds. We'd have lost that game. We'd have been sick looking back at the film of how we played in the first half. In the second half, it came down to defense and rebounding, and I just stepped into it and hit the shots. This game, Pauly, going to be a lot of fun. Michigan, Oregon, two well-coached teams, both coaches with extra time to prepare.
There'll be a lot of threes in this one, and again, I would look at the over. There's no way I want an under with the way the scramble points have been going and how tight the officials have calling it. And one of these teams could get very hot shooting the three. Up next, the deep dive. We'll look at the new tournament odds to win it all. Coming up on sportsBIT. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
We're back on sportsBIT. Betting Insight today at Pauly Howard at Teddy_covers on Twitter. Time for the deep dive. New odds now to win the tournament. How about Kentucky? Are they the first team in tourney history to have longer odds after making the Sweet 16 than they had at the start of the season, Teddy?
It's not a normal situation. But again, the start of the season was a long, long time ago. And when we talk about Kentucky and how their odds have changed over the course of the campaign, you know, there were times this year that Kentucky didn't even look like they were going to be capable of winning one game in the NCAA tournament, let alone a pair of them. So, but the odds have gone up even with the Sweet 16 run. But it tells you the odds were too low to begin with the Wildcats. And let's not forget, Kentucky in the South region is the only region where 1, 2, 3, 4, the top 4 seeds, all still standing, which means not just 1, 2 tough games, no matter what, for the Wildcats just to get out of this region and reach the Final Four. Then obviously 2 more tough ones to win the title.
Carolina 5-1, Kansas 5-1. How the hell is Gonzaga the third choice? Oh man, I can't believe that. Because if they're gonna have to play a great game to beat West Virginia, then they're probably gonna play Arizona again. In Arizona, you make them the favorite in that one. Especially they'll take over. The Arizona fans will take over San Jose.
Yeah, I would be surprised if those two teams played. If it's Zags, Arizona, which is, if the favorites hold up, that's what it's supposed to be. I'd be surprised if, at worst, that game's a pick 'em. I think Arizona would go off as slight chalk there. So that is an interesting number that you point out with the Zags shorter than Arizona. But with all of these odds, the key, as we're looking at it, is how tough the matchups are for them to get just to the Final Four. That's what these numbers are based on more than any other factor. And to me, Kansas 5-1, I like that Jayhawk team. They weren't a great point spread team this year. We saw last weekend that they're peaking right now very clearly. And the fact that they didn't play, as we talked about in the game preview, that they only played the one game in 13 days after getting bounced early from the Big 12 tournament is a blessing in disguise for them moving forward. But at 5-1, not a ton of value here on any of these shorter favorites. And I don't know if there's a dead team in the field right now, but I'm not all that interested in the long shots here. You want a Butler or a South Carolina at 50-1, Pauly, or a Xavier at 100-1?
I don't want any part of Xavier or South Carolina. I would take Butler, though.
Yeah, see, Purdue at 20-1.
I think Butler's got a shot. They've already beat the big boys. They've proven they can do it.
Yeah, no question. When Butler was going to back-to-back championship games, they had the NBA talent in terms of Gordon Hayward and Shelvin Mack. Do you think this Butler team has that level of talent? Because I don't.
I don't care. They've swept Villanova and they beat Arizona. They have a hell of a resume. What are we talking now? Seven wins against ranked teams. It's been an incredible run. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'd put the ACC on auto fade. I'm not laying 7.5 with Carolina. Come on. How about the East region now? Florida, Wisconsin, Baylor, South Carolina. Obviously, someone's going to the Final Four there. And Baylor was at one point was number 1 in the country. This is a great opportunity for hedging and future bets, because even Wisconsin, who was up there in the first preseason poll, they were like 100-1 a couple weeks ago because they lost 5 of 6. So great opportunity here to hedge if you have a ticket on one of these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to hedge at this stage, to be honest though, Pauly, if I've got a long shot ticket, even in the 100-1 range, I'm not looking to do anything prior to the Sweet 16. I'm really not. I want one more win and maybe 2 more wins in order to be sure that I'm locking in a reasonable profit. Because if you got 100-1 and you start hedging now, you have potential 4 hedge bets you're going to have to make. That's going to wipe away a significant portion of that profit.
No, you got to wait till you get in the Final Four. I'm with you on that. Yep, and South Carolina's been terrific as well. So you mentioned earlier about you want to play on a team that's 0-2 ATS in the Sweet 16. You got a couple chances here.
Well, Gonzaga, certainly the one that stands out in that regard. There's another trend worth noting. The team that played the best defense in the first 2 games, the team and simply the fewest points allowed. How about 19-6 ATS last 25, including 4 straight cashes? That would be the Florida Gators of this year as the team that falls into that particular point spread angle. But I don't know. Some of these teams, double-digit teams, the UCLA at 14-1, that one stands out to me. That Bruin team, I just am more and more impressed every time I watch them.
Well, yeah, 6 guys in double figures. They are nasty, especially when they're playing defense. Tomorrow, West Regional in San Jose, and we'll do Cavs and Nuggets. Money time, play of the day. Back to the NBA, 661, 662. You know what we're doing. Spurs, T-Wolves, over, 205.5. If the Minnesota defense let go of the rope, there aren't many teams better designed to take full advantage of that than the Spurs, and they've had their issues on defense as well. Let's get up and over the total, 205.5. tonight in the association. Big week coming up the rest of the week. We'll run through all the Sweet 16 games and weekend preview. Don't forget, we'll look at the Elite 8 games coming up on sportsBIT. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com. Thanks for watching.